Then jumping into those money mindsets, right? What we want to do is we want to assess, and then if you're on the left, figure out a way to get you over more towards the right side. If you're already on the right, how do we hone in even more and just fine tune what we're already doing? And that first mindset that most people are going to have, and generally, right, the two differences is spending first, saving last. So when people are thinking that way, they get their paycheck, they're spending on everything, everybody but themselves, right? They're if they're buying clothes, jewelry, shoes, whatever the case may be, whatever their guilty pleasures are, they're certainly allowed to have those. But oftentimes in that situation, they're paying everybody but themselves and not leaving anything left to save for now or for the future. So if you think about it, right, these big businesses that you may be giving money to, you're building up their wealth, you're putting money in their pockets first, and then if there is even anything left over, how much is it, and is it significant to be able to reach the goals that you may have within your life? And everybody's goals are going to be different. But when we're on that side, it's easy on, especially on social media. Maybe it's people here that maybe you're in this mindset. Maybe it's people that you might know that you're thinking of right now, but you might see the highlights on social media, right? All the great things that they're doing, whether it's traveling, cars, clothes, whatever it is. And then you might think to yourself, well, man, like they're living this great, awesome, luxurious lifestyle. What are they doing? They must be doing it something right. But just because you're seeing that, it doesn't paint the picture on what their situation actually looks like, and do they have true, real wealth that's built up, right? Or are they just showing all the highlights? And so, if we can make that shift over time to that second mindset to save first and spend last, it's going to allow you to make sure you're paying yourself, because each and every week you're going to work, you're working hard, you should reward yourself for that, right? And save and pay yourself first for whether it's something you're looking forward to pretty soon or it's some long-term goals. And if you can have that set in stone, that that's each month you're allocating a certain amount, whatever the case may be, then you can go ahead and spend. Go ahead and spend the rest, right? Spend on whatever those things are that you like to enjoy. But the quicker we can get into that mindset is just going to allow us to quicker be able to reach our goals for ourselves and for our family, right? And so to jump into the next piece here, a lot of people might feel overwhelmed, right, when they're thinking about their financial situation, what they're trying to accomplish. They might not really know where to start. And oftentimes that's going to lead to paralysis analysis, and they might end up doing nothing, right? And if you're in that spot, you've been there in the past, or you can relate in any way, this is just showing to know that you're not alone, right? Because more than half of adults out there do not have a budget in place. Nearly a quarter of Americans do not pay their bills on time, or all their bills on time. And then nearly that same percentage, right? One in four adults do not save any portion of their household's annual income for retirement. So that means a quarter of the country in that case is paying everybody else but themselves, right? And if you think about, I don't even know how many people, maybe there's like 350 million in the country. I might be way off. I might be somewhere close, but think about a quarter of that, right? It just kind of lets you take a breath to say, all right, there's people out there that are experiencing the same things as me, but what's the best way to get ourselves back on track here? And going through and understanding these five core components, we think could be a good start. And going through some of this stuff, depending on where you're at, right, your knowledge, some of it could be elementary to you, right, or some people might have never seen something on here before. So no matter what, somebody's going to be able to take a little piece that they could hopefully apply to their situation. But looking at the first piece is going to be your income, understanding your paycheck and how you're paid, and knowing that there's a difference between what you're paid and what you're actually taking home and receiving, right, and being able to spend. And that's because of different withholdings and deductions that we'll get into now. So, but first, let me make sure we're clear on the difference between your gross pay and your net pay. So gross pay, that's going to be the total amount of earned income that you have prior to any of these withholdings. So it's what you see on your W-2, it's what you've earned for the year, right? Now that net pay is going to be your bottom line. It's going to be what you take home after those taxes and deductions, and it's what most people pay attention to and what most people care about, and rightfully so, because that's what they're seeing come into their account each week or every other week, right? But then we're going to break down the different types of taxes that apply to each person. And first, we'll start with federal taxes. So I know there's a bunch of numbers on here, different brackets going on, but we're going to make it very simple and just first focus on 2024. Now, this is a little outdated here. These percentages that you see 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, right? Those are the brackets that you fall into based on your total income for the year. And this is for people married filing their taxes jointly. So if you're single, your bracket's going to be different. If you're married and filing separately for whatever reason, your brackets are going to be different. But between 23 and 24, you notice the percentages don't change. The income amounts are only being increased and trying to be increased due to inflation and keep up with inflation. So it's saying that, hey, we know things have costs have risen. So if your income has risen because of that, we shouldn't be bumping you into another bracket. We're going to give you a little bit of a benefit there. So brackets stay the same even in 2025. These brackets are the same. Income limits have increased a little bit in each bracket. But as you can see, the future in 2026, we are yet to know where those brackets are going to be. And that is because of this Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that I'm showing here on the screen. So as you see in 2017, those percentages, those brackets were different. Um, and that's because in 2018, this act was put in place to change those brackets and bring them down a little bit. Now, that act is set to expire at the end of this year. So that's something that this administration, it's one of their top priorities for the year to figure out what's going on. Are they going to extend this act and keep these percentages the same? Are they going to revert back to where they were in 2017? Or are they going to come up with an entirely new system, right? But either way, the one piece that I almost forgot about was that when you're looking at these brackets, if we're focusing on 2024, if you're in this 12% or this 22, whatever it may be, that doesn't mean that your money is all being taxed at that bracket. So, for example, if you make $100,000, that doesn't mean that you're paying 22% on 100,000 or you're paying 22,000 in taxes that year. What happens is it's kind of like a bucket system that overflows into the next one. So that first 23,000 is taxed at 10%. Once that fills up, it flows into the 12% till you're at 94, and then it flows into the next one and so on and so forth, depending on your income, right? From there, if we look at state taxes, withholdings for your state, every state is going to be different. I know for me in PA, there's a flat 3.07% of your income being taken out before you receive anything. However, in New Jersey, where I imagine majority of the people are on the call are from, they actually have a similar system to these brackets based on the amount of income that you make. So, depending on your income, your state tax could be as little as 1.5%, and it could go all the way up to 11%. And then there's going to be even more withholdings, right? Even more money that they're taking out of your pocket, but these are for a good cause. That 6.2% that's coming out of your pay, your gross pay, is going to be for Social Security. That other percent and a half or so goes towards Medicare. So God willing that they're both still there when we all retire, right? We're paying into that stuff now so that that way we can guarantee a stream of income for ourselves in retirement through Social Security, and we're able to have some level of health care through Medicare as well. We're paying into that now so that we can receive those benefits later down the line. Right? And then from there, the only other withholdings that you may have are going to be dependent on what benefits you have through your employer. So you're going to have your insurance, medical, dental, life, and all of that stuff comes out of your pay before you receive the money inside of your account, right? Before it's direct deposited to you. And then the depending on where you're at and what retirement plan is offered through your employer, you put that money in first, and then again, that's from your gross and then deducted, and you receive your net, right? Depending on how much you're contributing to there. And we want to make sure that we know our employer's match policy because if you're not maximizing the match that they're giving you for the amount of money that you're putting in, you're leaving free money on the table there. So, for example, if an employer is telling you that they're going to match 4% of your pay based on what you put in, what they're saying is if you put in 4% of your pay, say for example, that 4% equals $100 for somebody, right? That's 4% of their pay. If you put in your $100, the employer is telling you that they're also going to put in that $100 into your retirement plan. So what that means for you is you have an immediate 100% return on your investment. You've doubled your money right away just by putting it in outside of, expecting it to grow through the investments that you have inside of that account, right? So
I have a
if
question.
you're at least not,
Uh,
yeah,
is there a minimum to that? Is there like a law or a standard of the minimum percentage that a company will match, or is it whatever the agreement when you sign?
good question. So it's every employer is going to have their own policy. Some may not match anything. Some I've seen up to 7% they'll match. And it all depends on the employer sets that plan up when they make the plan, then when they open the plan up, they're setting that agreement that at that time and then it's pretty much set in stone from there. And typically, it's not discriminatory where they're able to say, hey, only certain employees are eligible for this match. It's pretty much across the company that if they say 4%, they say 5%, any employer is able to, or any employee is able to get that match. So
Okay,
does
so
that answer
there's
that?
kind of so there's no statute or law where they have to even give you an opportunity to match, correct?
Correct. They do not
Okay.
have to. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. So then from there, jumping into the second component here, being budgeting. This general rule of thumb is what we try to go by, this 50/30/20 budget rule. And again, right, everybody's situation is going to be different, but what we see is that if somebody can stick to as close to these numbers as they possibly can, they're going to set themselves up for success. And so what we're looking at is 50% of your income that you're taking home most of the time is going to go towards your needs, right? Ideally, where it's those things that you can't live without, right? You need to eat, need a place to live, you need running water, hot and cold air, right? You need your health, you need your car, your phone, whatever might be in those needs, right? But what we're saying is if you have 50% of your income going towards your needs, we're still giving the other 30% to be able to enjoy yourself, right? Like you can spend that on shopping, dining out, other hobbies that you may have. And just because you have a financial strategy, a budget, a plan, goals, whatever you want to call it, doesn't mean that we're saying, hey, you can't enjoy yourself. You can't have any fun while you're trying to grow your money or put yourself in a better position, right? Because that still leaves you with 20% of your money to save for yourself, whether that be for immediate things coming up now or for long-term future savings for yourself, right? And generally, that is a good rule of thumb to say that if you're saving 20% of your income, no matter what you're making, then when you get to retirement, the money that you've built up is going to be sufficient enough to sustain the lifestyle that you already had while you were working. And there's an easy way to track this. This is a budget sheet that we go through with our clients. One of the first couple of things when we're going through a full planning process, we're going through this budget because we want to understand what is their take home pay at the top, their monthly income. Is there any other income that they're receiving? Then from there, what are those basic monthly expenses? Things that are just set in stone. Maybe we can figure out ways to reduce them a little bit, but they're pretty much locked in, right, on things that you need to pay for. And from there, we give you the opportunity to create your own budget on your wants. How much do you think you're spending, or how much would you ideally want to spend on those things that you enjoy doing? And then what it's going to do is it's a calculator. Again, we could have this sent over to anybody that may want it, because it's an editable PDF where you can punch in numbers and it's going to change everything. Sorry, it's going to change everything here, give you your total needs, your total monthly expenses, your total wants, and then based on your income, say easy math, your income was 5,000 take home, your bills were 4,000 between the wants and the needs. It's going to calculate down here this monthly surplus that you have $1,000 left over each month. So from there, you can really hone in and focus on, well, all right, how much of that $1,000 in that scenario am I willing to allocate towards my short-term goals, things coming up in the next few years, and then long-term goals later down the line, right? And you can have that balance on depending on what your goals are. But this is something that you can have and track nonstop, right? And the numbers don't lie, right? There's a bad joke, right? Like men lie, women lie, the numbers don't lie, right? These are set in stone. It's going to tell you exactly what you need to do. It's just a matter of being disciplined and sticking to it. Next up is going to be borrowing, understanding credit and how it can have an impact um, on your situation. So if we take a look at the components of what makes up a credit score, it's going to be these five different areas here. Take a look at that orange chunk, that 35%, your payment history. So what that's telling you is it's the creditors want to see that you're paying your bills on time, right? If they're loaning out money to you, they want to know that you're able to pay that back on time. And if you're not, right, then your score will be negatively affected. Go ahead, Stephanie, raise your hand. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry. I'm always the person that asks a million questions.
Please.
It's not even a question, it's a statement actually. I just want to make sure everyone understands that credit score through what is it, Credit Karma, is not entirely accurate. You need to go directly to Experian. You need to go contact directly to get your most accurate score. Just heads up, found that out the hard way.
Okay. Yeah, if you had an experience there, right? Sometimes Credit Karma might be lagging behind what those actual entities are saying your score is, whether it's Experian, TransUnion. Yeah, going to them and figuring out they're going to have the most up-to-date score rather than relying on that Credit Karma. They might be a little bit behind for whatever reason because they're not the ones actually making up the score, right? They're just kind of an app and a website to help you track certain things. So yeah, no, that's a great point.
Yeah, and
And
usually if you go directly to your bank, there's usually a free service that they provide you that information um, that comes directly from, Experian or TransUnion, definitely utilize that.
that's without running your credit too, right? And that's important piece too. If they're able to give you that for free, I guess is for lack of a better word there, but if they're able to give you what your score is without running your credit and taking a knock for your credit being ran, absolutely you want to take advantage of that. Yeah, no, that's awesome. So appreciate it, Stephanie. There, I thank you for the engagement and what you're looking at. Right, the more recent the problem with your payment history, the lower the score. So the moral of the story there is you want to make sure you're paying your bills on time. And then that outstanding debt that makes up about 30% of your score, and this judges how close you are to your limit. So if your limit is $10,000 and you constantly have maybe like 9,000, 8,000 as a balance and you're getting close to that limit, the creditors that they don't want to see that because they want to know that yes, you can borrow money, but they want to know that you have the ability to pay it back and pay it down in a quick manner. So If you're getting close to the limits that you have, right, paying that back down to 20% is a general rule of thumb, under 20%. Um, Having that as your outstanding debt, like rolling debt under there, is going to be a recipe for them to say, okay, we see that he can borrow, she can borrow, but they're also paying it back quickly too. Credit history, 15% of your score, that's borderline out of our control, right? Like if you're older, you're going to have a longer history. That's going to give you a better score. If you're younger, you had less time to be able to have that history and build up your score, right? So, but the longer you have accounts open and you're paying them on time and everything, that's going to look good to them. And the one thought that I would have on this piece is, if whether it's yourself and you have kids, like I know for me, a important thing and great thing that my mom had done for me when I was about 15 was she put me on her credit card as an authorized user. So that allowed me at 15 to have some form of credit and start building it up at 15 years old. Of course, I wasn't really using it, right? Only for emergencies, maybe gas when I got a little bit older into, started driving, but wasn't something, she could see the balance. And if I was, and control that, if I was spending something, which I never did, that wasn't going to fly. She was going to take me off. But that allowed me from an early age to start to build that credit up and have a little bit of a head start. So if you have children, and you're thinking about it, you can put them on. I believe. I don't think there's an age limit. We'll have to get that direct answer. And I think that we have another banker specifically that'll be on one of these presentations, and they might be able to speak more to that. But that's a good way to start early for your kids. Lastly, you have new credit and different types of credit that makes up 20% of your score. And creditors want to see that, if you have different types, you're diverse in the way that you're borrowing and you're paying it back on time. That's going to be a good boost. And that lowest score starts out at a 300, or you can go all the way up to 850. And the better the score, the more money you're going to be able to borrow, and at a better rate, you're going to be able to borrow it at. So that's important, because if you're borrowing at a lower rate than somebody else for the same amount of money, that means they're paying more interest back to the bank or whoever lended that to them than you. And now that allows you, for that difference that you would be paying in interest otherwise, you get to keep that in your pocket and put it towards whatever's important to you at that point, rather than paying back the bank. And then just a couple pieces. There's common types of debt when we talked about those new credit and different types of credit, right? Credit cards, mortgages, student loans, car loans, maybe personal loans you may have. But those are going to be the ones that are going to factor into those different types. And then going into the fourth component, going to be saving. And what we want to focus on is we want to have that three-step process here and figure out what do we need to save for. First, most importantly, going to want to make sure we have an emergency fund built up that is generally somewhere between 3 to 6 months of your expenses, those fixed expenses. And that's important because something happens out of your control, whether, you can't work, wife, husband can't work, something happens with the kids that has to have you scale back your work, and less income is coming in, right? Hot water heater breaks, whatever the case may be. If you don't have that built up, either you're going to put yourself in more debt, paying off what you need to. You're going to have to take from other assets, maybe that you were saving for retirement or whatever the case may be, but it's going to set you back, right? So having that available to be able to spend on those emergencies, those unexpected events, is going to be important. And then once we have at least that minimum of 3 months, we'll continue to build up from there. But once we have that 3 month expense build up, then we can maybe focus on some large purchases, right? Maybe some or some of you have one, or maybe you're working through the process with Raritan Valley with Habitat to get a home, right? So that goal is probably checked off here, like it says. But maybe you're saving for other things, whether it's a car, wedding, new baby on the way, whatever the case may be. Those are going to be your short-term goals happening within a couple of years. And then from there, what does your future look like? What does it look like for your family? So, are you saving for retirement? Are you hoping to have some money set aside for their education? And then, how do we distribute between these three areas and spread them out to be able to build them all up at the same time? And this talks about this little case study, a little story here, talks about the cost of waiting and the advantages to starting to save something, no matter what it is, early. And the story is considering two twins, both 25, who will start saving with identical returns. One is called Mr. Early, his brother's Mr. Late. So Mr. Early comes a couple years out of school or whatever the case is, right? He's 25, and he understands the importance of paying himself first. Right? So he starts at 25, $5,000 a year, and he contributes to this, say, call it it's a retirement account. For 10 years, he put $50,000 total into that account. Right? Mr. Late, he's having fun in his early 20s, mid, even early 30s, right? And he's like, oh, I'm spending, I'm going out, having fun. I don't need to worry about saving. Like, I'll do all of that stuff later. I have plenty of time, right? He gets to 35. I don't know what happens to him, but he has a little reality check where he's like, whoa, I haven't saved any money for myself. And, his priorities have probably changed by that point, not going out as much, maybe as a family. So he's like, all right, I need to catch up, right? Let me start putting that $5,000 away like my brother did, but I'm not going to stop. I'm going to put it in all the way until retirement for 30 years till age 64. And he contributes a total of $150,000. So from 40 years, right, from 25 to 64, 65 for them too, right? If that money that they saved grows at an annual rate of 8% on average each year, who do we think is going to have more money? And if I could, I don't know, I'm not too good when I'm sharing with the chat box and everything, but if you want to put in just to have a little fun with it and take a guess on who you think's going to end up with more money in that 40-year period, um, might need a little help from somebody to pull up the chat while I'm sharing. I don't even know how to do that, but start AI companion. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Came back up. Okay. All right. No guesses. Feeling a little shy, maybe a little unsure, and perfectly understandable. So we'll pull both guys in here and see how much they had saved over the 40 years. There he is. So hey now, Mr. Early, right? He puts in 50,000. 40 years down the line, he has almost $800,000 saved. Right now, looking at Mr. Late, he saved triple the amount
Oh
that
no.
any
Okay. Sorry, baby.
all good. All right, didn't know if we had a question or a thought, but if not, right? So he saved for 30 years, triple the money, he's got to have more, right? He comes out, Mr. Late, with $611,000. So the difference there is about 170,000, give or take, in how much they have saved. But Mr. Late also put in $100,000 more, right? So in theory, that was about $250,000 of a mistake for Mr. Late by waiting. And that's because Mr. Early had a 10 year head start. He was able to benefit from the effects of compound interest. So think of it like a snowball, right? You're starting really small. As you're continuing to go and go and go, that snowball is just getting bigger, getting quicker, rolling down the hill. And the same way happens with your money because if he had that head start, he could have already had maybe $100,000 by the time Mr. Late had started. And if he did, that's going to be a tough way for Mr. Late to catch up by putting in 5,000, right? He would have had to put either more in or receive a higher return to be able to catch up. So This isn't saying that you have to start with $5,000 a year, right? You figure out what's your budget, what makes the most sense for you, and how can we just get something to start saving, right? Whether it's 25 bucks, 50 bucks, 100, whatever works for your situation, starting now rather than kicking the can down the road is going to result in benefits for you ultimately. And then, really quick, want to touch on the different categories that your money may fall into because all assets that you have that are growing in some form are going to fall into one of these taxation categories. And the first one is going to be taxable or 1099 now. So if you have any sort of gain in that asset or vehicle that you have in that bucket, you're going to pay taxes on the gains in that current year, right? So the next piece, tax deferred 1099 later, allows you to save money, put it away, and defer paying taxes on it until you take the money out of that account or that asset. Right? It also allows you to receive a deduction on that money today. So if you make 50,000 and you put 5 grand, that 5 grand example into a tax deferred vehicle, you're able to deduct that from your income. So now for the year, you only paid taxes on 45,000. That 5,000 that you put in defers until you take it out of that account. And yes, Stephanie.
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat that last thing?
What was it about the deductions?
Yes.
Yep. So, for example, I say you make $50,000 for the year. That's what's your gross pay, right? That we mentioned on that W-2. If you have withholdings and we looking back at that income where you saved 5,000 into say your 401k that you have, and it's in this tax deferred type of 401k, you're able to use that 5,000 and deduct it from your income for that year. So that way it shows that your gross pay was only 45,000 and then you pay when you file your taxes, you only owe taxes on that 45,000 that it says you made for the year. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, I do have one more question. A few slides before you, there was a 401k slash a 403b. I
Yeah.
think, what is the difference between those two?
Question. And we'll see that on the next screen.
Oh, sorry.
All the different options. No, you're good. It's just going to be the type of business or entity that's offering it. They're going to be on here in a second, so I'll break all that down, and that's a good question.
All right. Thank you.
Um, yep. And then lastly is going to be that bucket where it's tax-free income, 1099, never. And this doesn't mean, right, you still have to pay income taxes on your money, right, when you're making it. But what this is saying is that if you use after-tax dollars that are taxed today, what you're able to do is put it in a vehicle that allows it to grow tax deferred. You're deferring the taxes, you're never paying taxes. And even when you take the money out of that type of account, you don't owe taxes on that money like you would in that tax deferred account. Now you don't get that deduction today, right? But now all the money that's in there and the growth that it's had when you go to take it out, you don't owe taxes on it. So if you look at the bottom, right, if I don't didn't tell you anything more, I pretty much gave you a good gist on it. But if I didn't explain any of these buckets and you just were looking at the meaning or the phrases of how they were taxed, where would you want most of your money? Right. Most people are going to say that tax-free bucket, and let's look at the different assets and vehicles that come with those. So taxable income you see on the left is going to be your savings accounts, your CDs, different brokerage accounts that maybe you can open up through E-Trade or Robinhood in some sort of app and just put money in and out of it whenever you choose, and there's no penalty to do that. Real estate, if you sell anything, you owe taxes on the gains in that year. And if you have any sort of business, whether you're running your own business or you have some sort of side job or hustle, if you have income from that, you should be claiming it and paying taxes on it. Now, those tax deferred vehicles, it's going to be things like your 401k, 403b, IRA, different sorts of annuities, and other deferred comp plans, which are maybe like a 457 plan. And all those numbers, they're all doing the same thing. All those acronyms, those numbers, they're all having the same benefits. The only difference, to your point, Stephanie, is a 403b is most likely going to be offered through school districts or hospitals, just because it's a some sort of government entity there that's offering that. And then a 457, same thing. That's going to be through, like, if you're a police officer or a firefighter, you're most likely going to have a 457. But they're all doing the same exact things as far as benefits and the way you're able to invest inside of them. And then from there, on the tax-free side, we have Roth accounts, which can either be through a 401k, a 403b, or an IRA, or whatever other plan you may have if it's offered by your employer, or you can set up your own account. But that allows you to take your money. You don't get that deduction today again, but all the growth inside of it, you're never paying taxes on. 529 plans, those are education funding plans where if you put money inside of it, you can either use it for your children's K through 12, or you can save it and give it to them for their higher education, whether it's, a standard university. They can either be used for trade schools, designation certifications, like real niche stuff as well. It's not just if you don't go to a college, right, a university, that doesn't mean you can't use it. There's other things it can be used for. And when you're using it on those type of things, the withdrawals again are tax free. You're not paying any tax on the growth if you're using it for qualified education expenses. Municipal bonds, that's investing in like local government or state government or even federal government debt. Um, And then from there is going to be cash value. Life insurance has the ability to grow tax deferred and be received and distributed tax free. So what we're looking at with clients is we're asking them, what are the percentages of what you have in each of these buckets? And are you happy with those percentages? If not, let's figure out how to shift those assets and, make your money that you're saving more tax efficient for you and make sure that you're keeping more of what you saved and not giving it back to the government more than you have to. Right? And then this last piece is going to be protecting, and this is normally what we will first focus on when we're thinking about a financial plan. You want to lay the foundation through protecting yourself and your assets, but having it last in this presentation just is timely and kind of ties everything together. And you can't forget about protecting your most important assets. Most people might think it's your car, jewelry, home, maybe your pet, right? If you got a good buddy, good dog at home. And while they're certainly important, most people overlook that your most important asset is actually yourself and your ability to produce income for you and your family, right? So if you think about it, if something happens to you where you're unable to work and your income stops, or you pass away and now your income is gone permanently, how does that affect your family situation and their standard of living, right? Now, if you that not having insurance on those things as well as your home, auto, even jewelry, right, pet, whatever insurance you may feel you might need out there, going to be important to have it because that's laying the foundation of your entire financial plan. It's protecting you to allow you to do all of those other things that we just looked at, right? Because if you think about it, if you don't have, say, it's car insurance, home insurance, whatever it is, and something happens, or insurance on your income, and something happens where there's a shortage there, and you're exposed to a risk, and that risk happens. Now you have to shell out a bunch of money. Say, for example, you had a car accident, you didn't have insurance. Now you owe $10,000, right? Because the insurance company isn't going to pay the difference. So with that 10,000, you build up your emergency fund, right? Going back all the way to the saving, right? If you build up your emergency fund, say there's maybe 15,000 in there, whatever it is, right? Now you got to owe 10,000 for this unexpected expense. That could leave you extremely exposed to all the hard work and things that you put in place crashing down on you, right? Like that budget could go out the window if you have an expense like that. Now your budget's all out of whack, right? You're not saving the way that you were, you're not putting things away for yourself. Could run the risk that if you drain that emergency fund, right, but now you still have other bills and expenses coming in, that could cause you to go into debt, right? Now, if we're still having some issue there with the budget, income, whatever it is, start missing payments, that could have a negative impact on your credit score. Could make it harder to borrow, could make it harder to get a good interest rate. And then saving could leave you to stop saving for yourself, right? And then once you stop and you get out of that habit, makes it even harder to get back on track. So there's kind of a snowball effect in that way too, right? Where that's kind of a negative impact and a negative snowball. It just keeps building on top of itself. So having those protection pieces in place is going to allow you to protect yourself from those risks and continue into the more exciting things, accumulating, growing your money, leaving money for your family, and everything else that's important to you. And so that was what I had. I know we had a couple questions during the presentation. I appreciate it. Was there anything else on anybody's mind? See if we have any chats here. No. Okay.
Hello, my name is Isabel, and thank you for this valuable information. Okay, so I'm sorry I came too late. I was working, but now I'm here. And
No
thank you so
worries.
much. It's very valuable.
Happy to do it. I'm glad to hear that you found it valuable and that you still made the time coming home right from work. So thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Yep. And so if no questions at the time, no worries.
Hey,
Just want to leave you guys with,
Jake,
yeah,
can I ask you a question? You
yeah.
mentioned when we were talking about budgeting, you mentioned that you have a PDF form that people can use to fill in their income, all of their expenses, et cetera, et cetera. Is that something that can be shared with the participants so people can start using that form to start working out their budgets?
Yeah, it sure can. If Jill, if you would be willing, if I could send it to you and you could distribute it out to all the attendees because you have all of their information already. If you're willing to do that, I can do that. If not, if you guys want to leave an email in the chat, I can do that. I can send it myself.
No, I'll
But
send
yeah,
it out to them. No problem.
yeah, okay, yeah, we can definitely get that out to all you guys.
Thank you.
Can you additionally, Jake and Jill, if you guys can please, if you can send like a hard copy, not a hard copy, but a digital copy of the PowerPoint presentation, just so I can refer back to it as needed.
So the PowerPoint that I have is for, I guess, internal use, where it's not a marketing piece that we could necessarily send out to anybody.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so there's some compliance reasonings there within the company on why we can't do that. But I would say at the very least, if we have it recorded, while you can't go through it on your own, right? My face or somebody, right? We're going to be on to the left of your screen or whatever, or maybe not, but that would at least give you the chance to pause on each thing and pick up maybe what you were hoping to or whatever you had missed.
Yeah, there's just a few things that I still I need to kind of dive a little deeper into.
Okay.
Especially in regards to like savings and I understand now the difference between 401k and the 597 and the 403b, and I get that
Yeah.
part. I just also am trying to figure out, I know that I had a college fund for individually for both of my children, and my oldest daughter, I didn't do it the correct way the first time. I just opened up a savings account for her, like a good old savings account.
Yep.
And my second daughter, I actually opened up, I'm drawing a blank right now, but I did it the right way the second time. And there is pros and cons to both of the ways that I set them up, without getting, you know, kickbacks financially, from setting it up correctly. So I don't know. I just need to, like, there's a few things I need to like dive a little bit deeper into, because that whole thing when you were talking about credit, and starting it as young as possible, that is 100% true. My mother put me as a cosigner when I was in third grade on her credit card. And so I had a substantial amount of credit
Right.
history by the time I got
Right.
to 18. And I was able to get a
Yep.
$10,000 luxury loan to buy a motorcycle. I know that was not
Nice.
the smartest idea, but
You're having fun, right? Those wants at the end of the day there, right?
you
Gotcha.
know,
Got
so but to get a
That's
luxury
awesome.
loan at 18, that's not, it's not like a car loan where that's
Right.
borderline a necessity. This is a luxury loan, and so that is very factual. If anyone is listening, if you have children, like, please, most definitely, like, even if you don't utilize it, well, actually, no, you should probably utilize it just a little bit,
A little
like
bit.
fill up your tank once a month with it and pay it off, um, immediately. And it will establish them so much credit that it will change their lives. I didn't utilize it in the right way, but that's a whole other topic. But
Well, either way, right? It built up your score at that point too. If you didn't
yeah,
have that, your mom didn't do that for you,
yeah, I
most
guess.
likely would have been really hard to get that loan, might have not gotten it, or had a terrible rate attached to it, right? So, no,
And
that's
even,
awesome to hear that somebody did it, validated what I said, and it's helped too.
yeah, I mean, even it still helps me even to this day, because I know, you threw up the pie chart, and it does hold a decent portion, your credit history and how long you've had credit. Um, and I'm about to be 34 years old, and I have 23 years of credit history, which is like odd.
Doesn't even make sense if you think about it, right? If you didn't know, if you weren't
Yeah,
aware, like how would that be a thing? Yeah.
you know, this is why I believe in you right now. So thank you so much again for your time and sharing this information. Like it says right now, knowledge is power. So thank you.
Yeah, true.
Exactly, absolutely. Happy to hear you guys got some value out of it. And yeah, that quote there, something that we like to say and to wrap up with is right, like knowledge is power, but the action that you could take is much more powerful. So if you leave here today and you know just one thing that you didn't know before, then it was certainly worth it. But if you take action and you're able to apply that one thing, even if it's one, to your situation and puts you and your family in a better position, then
Mhm.
you're the one who really took advantage and got the most value out of this time tonight.
That's wonderful. Yes.
And
And
ultimately, we're all on this call probably for the same reason,
Mhm.
is that we want to establish some sort of roots, for our families. And this is how we're going to make it. This is how we're going to establish those roots and plant those seeds.
It's
So
true.
let's do it. I wish everyone here the best of luck and much luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
you're welcome. You guys are both welcome. Again, thank you for making the time, right? Just taking that step to be on here and take an hour out of your night shows that you have some sort of care, some sort of priority on putting yourself in a better position. And of course, Habitat has helped you guys, it seems, or maybe if they haven't yet, they're going to, and that they're able to bring these resources on in my area and all the other areas is just amazing. So thank you guys for taking the time. This is my information on the screen here. More than happy to connect with any of you just about some simple questions that you might have. If you have simple questions, right, not going to charge for anything for my time by just answering a couple things or hopping on a quick phone call to help you guys. If you want to get an understanding of what creating a financial plan can look like for you, certainly happy to run through that, the potential, what the process looks like, the costs associated with it. So yeah, any way that I can help going forward,